Okay, wanted to show you guys how to import static meshes from Blender into Unreal 4. Couldn't find a lot of information on this, so wanted to let you know some of the stuff I found out. This may not be the only way to do it. It's almost certainly not the most correct way to do it, but it does work. So here we go. Well, first thing you're going to want to do, make sure you've got the latest version of Blender. Right now that's 2.7.0. This does update fairly frequently, so make sure you check on blender.org for the latest versions. So what you're going to want to do, come into Blender. I've got my mesh here. It's actually a rock. It's not a potato, I promise, even though it looks like one. It will do for this demonstration. So come down here. You're going to change this window to your user preferences. It should probably open into interface, but you're going to come over here to add-ons, and we're going to look for the FBX add-on. This is the import-export for the Autodesk FBX format. This is kind of the de facto format for bringing assets in and out of Unreal 4. This is sort of what they've decided to standardize around. It's a pretty robust format. You can actually import armatures, animations. There is some support for importing textures. The limitations in Blender right now with this plugin in terms of actually writing those textures out are a little extreme, but it actually works really well for the meshes, so that's what we'll talk about today. There are some bugs, however, in this version of the plugin. Most notably, you're going to see some issues with the way it writes your tangents and your normals, and the upshot of that is that when you come into Unreal and you set up your materials, your normal maps are going to be reversed. Obviously we don't want that. There is a solution for that, however. So if you'll notice here, this file is actually, it'll give the path for that file right here on my machine, and probably yours. It's going to be Program Files, Blender Foundation, Blender, whatever version of Blender you're in, then Scripts, Add-ons, and then the folder for this actual script. So there is a newer version of this script on GitHub. So what you can do actually is open up your web browser, come over to github.com, and hit up this URL. I'll post this in the description for you guys. And these guys are maintaining this plugin. As of right now, they've had a commit 22 days ago. This is not in the latest branch of Blender yet, so that may change in the future. But for now, what you can do is go ahead, download this zip file, and it's just going to be basically the latest commit that they've made here. Now, one of the caveats here, of course, is that this is production code, so this could break. It's definitely experimental at this point, but as of right now, on my machine, this is working really well. So go ahead, download that zip, and then you're going to want to go ahead and unload or unzip that file. And there's going to be a folder in there, so navigate to your downloads, find that zip file, unzip it. You're going to have this IO scene FBX folder. Inside here are all the scripts, and if you were paying attention to that file path inside of Blender, where it's telling you where that resource is, if you navigate to that, which I've done here, essentially what you're going to want to do is basically just replace all of those Python scripts in that folder. Now in Blender there is some functionality for installing a new plugin from a file, which I tried first. It didn't seem to work though, because it's just bringing in this file and not all of these dependencies. So it's going to be simpler just to copy and paste that over into that folder. If you want to make a duplicate of that folder and then save it to your desktop first, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend keeping two versions of this plugin in the add-ons directory, however, because they'll both load in, and it'll be a little confusing as to which one you're actually using. So go ahead, paste those over, come back into Blender. At that point, what you're going to want to do is just hit refresh, and if everything's gone correctly, it should have refreshed this, and you're now going to be using the most current version of this. Go ahead and save your user settings, flip back over to your 3D view. Got my model right here. I won't go into how to actually prepare your model for a real-time engine. There's a lot of tutorials out there for that. So I can get into more detail about that later if you guys are interested. But for now, let's just assume you know what you're doing. The one thing I will say is you want to make sure you're at 0, 0, 0 in terms of your object origin here. So if I had spawned this mesh over here and I had modeled it and stuff, and then I just moved it down here, I would need to make sure that I come into this object and I actually apply that location, because if I don't, when I bring it into Unreal, it's going to be up here, but the pivot point is going to be at 0, 0, 0. So you just want to pay attention to that. And in this case, I'm putting the pivot up a little bit further because I know I'm going to use this with the static mesh brush, and I know that I want the bottom of this to collide with my terrain. So if I were to move it like this, that would be less desirable because I can't be assured that on slopes and stuff this is going to collide the way I want it to. So for me, I'm going to bring it down there a little bit. Here's what you want to do now. You're going to go up to export. You should have this FBX format down here now. If you don't see that, restart Blender and it should show up. We're going to go there. You can see I've done this a few times. So your settings are over here. There's some things that are important. The old version of this exporter does not have this combo box. So if you don't see this, you are still on the old version, which is fine. It does work. Again, there's just a couple things that were broken about it that work better here. This bin binary export is somewhat experimental. It breaks some of the tangent space and stuff, so I would just go ahead and use this, the 6.1. That works fine. I tend to go ahead and set my scale to 100 here. If you leave this at 1, which is the default, things will be really small when you import them into Unreal. There may be a way inside the global Blender settings to change your default units and get around this problem globally. I'm not sure about that, so if you know the answer to that, just go ahead and comment on this video because I'm curious. You're also going to have the option of changing basically which coordinate is forward, which coordinate is up. This may not be exactly right, but it's been working for me. When you come in here, all of these are going to be checked, so that's going to be the default. Since we're just doing the mesh, I'm going to click this. You also want to make sure that selected objects is checked, because otherwise it's going to take everything that is in your project, all of the objects, and try to import them. We only want the selected object imported, so make sure that is checked. And that's about it. You also want to make sure your include tangent space is checked. This is what is basically writing that tangent space to the file so that your normal maps and stuff aren't reversed. So this is important. These things you can really leave alone. We're not doing anything with animation. I have no animation in this project, so there's going to be nothing to bring in here. It gives the option of embedding textures. I've found that it's cleaner to basically export your textures as separate image files and deal with them entirely inside of Unreal. So I'm not messing with that right now. So let's just go ahead and increment this so I can bring it in as a unique file. So I'm going to give it a name here. Go ahead and export that. And if I come over to Unreal, now you can see I've already imported a version of this and I've textured it. So this is what ultimately that ends up looking like. but I'm going to import a new version just to show you some of the settings there. You might think that you would come up to the File menu and go Import. You don't. Actually, all of your art assets are going to come in through your content browser. So go ahead and navigate to the folder that you want to use. Click Import. We're going to try to find this thing here. So let's see, I've got it in my rocks folder here, and here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this thing in, and you'll notice here all of the so you'll notice here all of the supported oh, never mind, we're not going to do that. So we'll navigate to that, and then I'm going to click Open. And here's what's important here. It's going to automatically select static mesh here. That's correct. We don't have any level of detail stuff set up, so you can leave that for now. Make sure that this combo box is set to import normals and tangents. This combine meshes, that's rather irrelevant at this point. I'm not going to attempt to import the materials. I'm not going to import textures. Not going to invert normal maps. So we're going to go ahead and click Import. It's going to give you this message log. It's basically saying, hey, this file is in format 6.1.0. We support 7.3.0, but it does work. So just ignore that. And then we're going to have our asset right here, this rock. So if I bring it in here, I can see it isn't textured at this point, but it is scaled appropriately and oriented correctly. And so that's how that works. And you know, I could go ahead and import my textures and my UV unwrap and everything and apply it to this using a material, which I've done with these. But that's basically how you do it. So everything you see in this scene has been imported from Blender in that manner. In a later tutorial, I can talk about how you actually import an armature and do some animation, which it supports. It does work rather well, so we'll get into that later, but that is the basics. So good luck.